Is Luis Severino the X factor for the New York Mets in the NLCS? We'll talk about it on today's show.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, the NLCS resumes tonight. Mets versus Dodgers. First time an NLCS game will be played at Citi Field since 2015. It's going to be a crazy environment, and the Mets have a chance here. You sweep the games at home, and you don't have to go back to LA. Doesn't seem likely, and that is why we are talking today, first and foremost, about the pitching matchup of Game 3. Because I'm looking at this series as one that absolutely can go the distance. And now it's essentially a 5-game set. These teams traded blows in LA. So now it's who can get to 3 wins first over the next 5 games. And Luis Severino is going to go up against Walker Buehler in this pivotal Game 3, as well as potentially in Game 7. So you're looking at these guys, and it really could be the matchup of the series at this point. Now, you look at the other matchups that we're probably going to get. Yoshinobu Yamamoto versus Jose Quintana. To me, that is an interesting coin flip because Yoshinobu Yamamoto is the better pitcher. He's got the better stuff. But Jose Quintana has been healthy this season, and he's on the better roll right now. So it's either stuff versus momentum. I could see that going either way. Game 5, Jack Flaherty versus who knows for the New York Mets. Big edge for the Dodgers. Game 6, Sean Manaea versus a bullpen game. Huge advantage Mets. We just saw that play out in Los Angeles. So that brings me back to this matchup. And this is why Luis Severino is the biggest X factor in this series. Because on paper, the Mets should have a massive advantage in Game 3 and Game 7. Luis Severino made 31 starts this year, pitched to a 3.91 ERA and 182 innings pitched. Walker Buehler made 16 starts this year, pitched to a 5.38 ERA, just gave up 6 runs in his first playoff start of the season. You look at Severino, in his 2 playoff starts, it was quality starts each time. 6 innings pitched, 3 earned runs, but not elite starts, not lights out. Jose Quintana has performed better. Sean Manaea has performed better. Sevy has been good, not great. Will he turn in a great Game 3? This is the game because ideally you only see this matchup once because the series ends with the Mets victory in 5 or 6. That's what you hope happens, and it very well could. Could I see the Mets winning all 3 games at home? I think there's a chance. Is it likely considering who the Dodgers have in that starting lineup? Probably not, especially with Jack Flaherty going in Game 5. But still, there's a distinct possibility. And then if you get back to LA, and that's where this series likely goes, at least 6 or 7, you love the Mets having Sean Manaea in that Game 6. And ideally, you already have 3 wins in your pocket. You take 2 or 3 at home, and you give the ball to Manaea against the Dodgers bullpen with the chance to go to the World Series. I think that is the outcome that Mets fans should really be hoping for, the realistic outcome, I would say. Because, again, it's not entirely likely that they're just going to sweep these games at Citi Field. So you have to get 2 of the next 3. And I look at that Game 5 with Jack Flaherty on the mound against, I guess, Kodai Senga, and then you see if David Peterson's available after Games 3 and 4. I just don't feel great about it. Again, I feel pretty good about Quintana versus Yamamoto, and I should feel great about Sevy versus Buehler. With that said, Luis Severino has a propensity to make some mistakes. And there's a lineup on the other side that can really make him pay for those mistakes. If the Dodgers turn their lineup over to Shohei Ohtani, who's been unbelievable with runners in scoring position this playoff run, and he's got 2 runners on, and you're pitching to Ohtani and he hits a 3-run homer, that can cripple you in these games. Let's say you walk Ohtani, bases juice, Mookie Betts, he can tag you, and then you're in real trouble. So Sevy really has to be the best version of himself in these games, particularly in game 3, because the Mets can win game 3, and then if Quintana continues this brilliance, all of a sudden you are sitting pretty. That's what you really want to see happen here, because then you have sort of a house money game 5 against Jack Flaherty. If you beat him, hey, you just clinch. If not, you know you got a couple cracks at it in LA with Manaea against the bullpen in game 6. Now, what are Sevy's chances to have a great start here? Here's one of the first big, notches on his belt, or one of the first big checks in the pro column of things that are on Severino's side to get the job done. This year, I had no idea, which knock on me. I guess I should have picked up on this. Sevy way better at home than on the road. 2.96 ERA at Citi Field, 5 ERA on the road. Obviously, that's because his worst starts came on the road, the big blow-up starts. But for the most part at home, he was 3 runs or less, really solid, and also a different pitcher in the sense that he struck out guys more on the road and pitched to contact more at home. I think part of that might just be the fact that the starts were going better when he was at home. So he's pitching to contact, trying to get deep into the game. And if you're trying to pitch yourself out of jams, you're probably going to get some more strikeouts. But it was kind of an interesting split there to see. I think it was about, his strikeout per 9 at home was 7.2, and on the road it was 8.8. So kind of a drastic difference there. Another interesting split that I wanted to mention here. I told you on, 2 shows ago that I was going to look up Sevy's splits when it comes to catchers. When Francisco Alvarez is behind the dish, and he was for 16 of Severino's 31 starts during the regular season, and obviously both of the ones in the playoffs, Alvarez has started every game. Luis Severino had a 4.23 ERA. When Luis Torrens was behind the plate, 7 starts, he had a 3.22 ERA. Considering the struggles that Francisco Alvarez has had with the bat, I am curious if they would consider going Torrens for this game to give Sevy the catcher he's more comfortable with, also the catcher that is better at controlling the running game. I'm just interested if they might pull that card. If there was ever a time to start Torrens, I think it's this game. If the Mets got to a game 7, you're probably going to roll with Alvarez, right? He's your starting catcher. But under these circumstances, maybe it might make sense to go to Torrens, or who knows, maybe the Mets are just going to live and die with Francisco Alvarez, and I won't be mad at that. But it is a stat worth noting. When you look at the matchups in this series, or against Severino, Mookie Betts has seen him the most, which makes sense, right? Red Sox, Yankees early in their careers. Betts, a career 324 hitter against Sevy with a 954 OPS. Shohei Ohtani has seen him 6 times. He's 3 for 6 with a home run and a double. Freddie Freeman only 5 times, 0 for 5 with a walk. Teoscar Hernandez 2 for 11, a home run and a double. Max Muncy 1 for 2 with a homer. And again, a lot of the other guys he just hasn't faced very much in that Dodgers lineup. Just mentioned a few that he hasn't seen much. So there's not a lot of head-to-head to draw on outside of Mookie Betts, who has kind of owned him. We'll see how it all shakes out in this Game 3 start. Obviously, with Sevy, he has that chance, again, where he can make a mistake and give up that home run that really hurts you. What you want to see with Luis Severino is keeping the ball on the ground, using that sinker, getting ahead in counts, pounding the zone, and then hopefully getting some chase when he has those opportunities to get those strikeouts. When Sevy's at his best, though, he's not striking out 11 in 6 innings. When he's at his best, he's striking out 4 or 5, and he's just living off of those ground balls, quick inning after quick inning after quick inning. I am curious what the hook's going to be on Severino, because against the Phillies, remember, he was sort of cruising until he wasn't. So I just wonder how much Carlos Mendoza takes that into account. You have a fairly rested bullpen, right? You just had a day off. Even though you used Stanek, Maton, and Diaz for 4 outs apiece, so you can go back to any of those guys. Jose Budo, probably not going back to him, I don't think. They might give him one more day. Maybe you want to have Budo saved for a potential Game 5. Well, there's going to be a Game 5, but to potentially pitch in that Game 5 when it's sort of throw everything against the wall and see what sticks. Yeah, I look at this game and your ideal situation is Sevy gives you another quality start. I'd be fine with him doing what he has so far this postseason. If he gets through 6 with 3 earned runs, you pat him on the back, you go to the bullpen, you go to that Maton, Stanek, Diaz combination, and hopefully the Mets have scored at least 4 runs at that point. But Luis Severino, starting 2 of the final 5 games of this series, very much could decide things for the Mets. I think getting game 3 really is imperative to continue to build up the momentum of game 2, to keep your home crowd really in it, fired up when you get to a game 4. They're going to be in it no matter what. But, Mets fans, all right, we have some angst. We have some anxiety. If the Mets are trailing in the series and then they get down early in game 4, Mets fans can crawl into a shell a little bit. If you win game 3, you're up in the series. Game 4, you're a little more stress-free. And the last thing you want is to face elimination in game 5. So taking game 3 would, take that off the table, right? You're at least going to get to a game 6 where, regardless of what happens, Shaw Mania can either pitch you into the World Series or pitch you into a game 7. So you just have to make sure you get one at home. And this is the one that you have to get, because then you see what happens in the next 2. And who knows? Who knows? The Mets could be celebrating early, but Severino is going to be a big, big part of this series. He's supposed to be able to beat Walker Buehler, but will Buehler show up to the occasion against this Mets lineup? I want to talk about that next. Who's going to be in the starting lineup? We'll go through it. First, though, quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get the hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats for your live play-by-play and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. So win or lose, you're going to get those $200 in bonus bets as long as you place that first $5 bet. Here's what I'll tell you. We're about to talk about Walker Buehler. I like Pete Alonso in this matchup. Remember when he faced Aaron Nola, we talked about all the home runs he hit against Nola in his career. Even less at bats for Pete. He's got 4 career home runs against Walker Buehler. And let's see, I think it's 14 at bats. So maybe you take Pete Alonso on a home run prop for $5, and either way you're going to win, because you're going to get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Stay up to date with all the latest in the world of sports when you check out Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Our goal is to get to 11,000 subscribers by the end of the postseason. Appreciate all of you who continue to subscribe. All right, so the Mets will be going up against Walker Buehler, who's had a tough season. He's coming off Tommy John surgery, had a hip injury in the middle of the year that sidelined him for a bit. And overall, he just has not been himself. At times, he's gotten up to the same velocity of the past, but it hasn't been as consistent. It's just a really good pitcher that is struggling with getting back to himself, and that is natural when you're coming off TJ. He did tell the media before this start that he feels like a more confident version of himself. He said the last 6 to 8 starts, he's really had that confidence again. The results have been better over that stretch. More of an ERA in the 4s instead of the ERA that was over 6 for portions of this season. But again, he does not have the track record this year that Sevy does. Now, you look at Walker Buehler and what he did in his playoff start. The Padres tagged him for 6 runs, but it was 1 bad inning. He settled down after that, put up 3 more zeros, really saved their bullpen, and really allowed them to go bullpen game in game 4 against San Diego. And it kind of was one of the swings of the series to get Buehler through 5 in that outing. I think they'll have a short hook on him for sure, but they also have a lot of confidence in him. He has been a huge part of that organization, homegrown guy that was one of the best pitchers in baseball before he went down with that Tommy John, his second Tommy John surgery. So you can't count him out. That's what I'll say. When you look at the matchups, Pete Alonso, as I mentioned during that FanDuel read there, Pete Alonso has crushed Walker Buehler in his career. 5 for 14, 4 home runs, 8 RBIs. So I circle Pete Alonso and I say, you know what? You see these big games, home crowd, and at least in recent memory, it feels like the fan favorite gets the job done. I think that David Wright, World Series hitting the home run. Pete Alonso and Jesse Winker both hit home runs in the first game back, at Citi Field in a couple of weeks when the Mets opened things up against the Phillies. Maybe this is the day for Pete to hit another homer. Jose Iglesias is 4 for 10 in his career against Walker Buehler. Starling Marte 2 for 6 with a pair of doubles. Beyond that, not a ton of experience. Jesse Winker got 15 at bats, 4 for 15, 2 homers. Brandon Nimmo 2 for 10. Jeff McNeil 1 for 9. JD Martinez 0 for 3. So those are just some of the guys who have seen Walker Buehler before. Again, Pete Alonso clearly has had the most success. Jesse Winker, though, as well. When you look at what these guys have done so far in the playoffs, we talk about the top 4 in the lineup. Pete Alonso, 410 on base percentage, 996 OPS. He's been great. 3 home runs, 6 RBIs, 6 runs scored. Mark Vientos spent the whole show glowing about him yesterday. 378 average, 410 on base, 676 slug, 3 homers, 11 runs driven in, 1 away from the franchise record in a single postseason, 6 runs scored. Lindor getting on base at a 372 clip, 872 OPS, 2 homers, 7 RBIs, 8 runs scored, leading the team. And then you got Nimmo, who I feel like has had better at-bats than the numbers would suggest. He's only got 1 homer. He scored 6 runs, 4 RBIs. He's hitting just 212, 333 on base, 303 slug. Obviously, he's playing through that plantar fasciitis. We'll see what happens there if they're going to continue rolling him out there every single day. If there was a game to bench him, maybe it's this one just because you'd give him 2 days off his feet. I don't know how much that would help, but sounds like they're going to just keep putting him in the lineup, and rightfully so. He's one of the leaders on this team. Now you talk about guys who have been in the lineup pretty much the whole way through. Starling Marte, 241 average, 333 on base, 276 slug, 1 double, no other extra base hits, but 6 RBIs. He has come through clutch time and again. I feel like he's going to stay in this lineup. Francisco Alvarez has not hit well, 338 OPS, 156 average, 182 on base, no extra base hits, so 156 slug. He's been a problem, but I don't think that they're going to just all of a sudden hand the keys to that position to Torrens. They love his leadership behind the dish. They trust him calling games. So we'll see if Torrens gets this start. Then you have Iglesias. 222 average, 263 on base, 222 slug, no extra base hits, 8 strikeouts compared to just 2 walks. I feel like he is struggling a little bit here. And at some point, I would consider going to Jeff McNeil. Doesn't sound like it's going to be this game. Carlos Mendoza was really hesitant to potentially go to McNeil, and you're sort of seeing the guys that he favors, right? Iglesias being in there every single game. Now that you have Jeff McNeil, is he going to change things up? It doesn't seem like it. It seems like he's going to ride with the guy that has sort of got the Mets here, and I can't fault him for that, but it's just something to note. If Iglesias continues to struggle, do you ever consider going to Jeff? I mean, for their careers, Jeff McNeil has been the better player. And in the second half, Jeff McNeil was really coming on, but he also has the rust that you have to think about. Tyrone Taylor, feel like he is one of Carlos Mendoza's guys at this point, and you don't have a lot of other options in center field, right? I don't necessarily want to see Harrison Bader get a start over Taylor. Taylor's 4 for 28, 2 doubles, 1 RBI, 4 runs scored. Hasn't been great, but feels like he's going to be out there. Then you have Jesse Winker, 476 on base, 4 for 15, OPS over 1,000. I feel like he's supposed to stay at DH considering the numbers that he had. I can't see them pulling him from the lineup, but that leads to the interesting dilemma with JD Martinez, who hasn't been bad. He's 4 for 14, hitting 286, gotten on base at a 376 clip, no extra base hits, so the slug isn't there, but still, he's driven in 3 runs in kind of a limited amount of appearances. There's no lefties in this series, so when do you work him in? It sort of sounded like he's going to start game 3, but if he is, who's getting benched? Is Jesse Winker getting benched, or is Starling Marte getting benched, or is Tyrone Taylor getting benched? Can they put Brandon Nimmo in center field? I really don't think they can, but the fact that Carlos Mendoza sort of insinuated that JD Martinez would be in there, he's your DH then. Jesse Winker has good numbers against Buehler. Are you benching Starling Marte and putting Winker in right? Are you benching Nimmo and putting Winker in left? Or are you going all offense and you're just ignoring the fact that Nimmo's got plantar fasciitis, and putting him in center field is just taxing his body even more, asking more out of him? I just don't know how you can do that. But what I will say, if the Mets decided to go that route, they'd have a pretty loaded lineup in this game. Lindor, Vientos, Nimmo, Alonso. If you stuck with what you did last time through, Marte, Winker, and then JD Martinez batting 7th, Luis Torrens or Francisco Alvarez batting 8th, and then maybe you use Iglesias to turn the lineup over, or Iglesias 8th, Alvarez 9th. That's pretty stacked. So it's something that the Mets might consider. And if Noah was healthy, I think they probably would have gone to it. Because he's not, I just can't see it. So if JD Martinez is in the lineup, who's getting benched? Winker or Marte? We'll find out when that lineup is released. But I do believe the Mets have a great opportunity to score early and often. Pack Citi Field crowd, all the momentum on your side. We'll see. It's going to be a really exciting game. The Mets can get an early lead and Severino can get them deep into the game. That's going to set them up so well for the rest of this series. But we'll be live after the game to discuss that. I'm going to do a live stream as soon as we get the results. What I want to do to close out the show, though, we still got one more segment. I want to talk about an award, unfortunately, because Francisco Lindor got snubbed. Let's spend a segment on it. First, though, quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. And if you're trying to get in to Game 3, Game 4, Game 5, you want to use Game Time. They have their Game Time picks, which is going to filter out the fluff and show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And also, you can buy tickets up to an hour after first pitch. So prices might be a little bit crazy before the game starts, but after, maybe you can find yourself a great deal to get into the ballpark. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. If you're an everyday listener to the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service where you get updates from me anytime news breaks on the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime. You can also take part in our Locked On Mets sign photo giveaways and get a line of graphics sent to your phone each day so you know the starting lineup without ever having to go on social media. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find the link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. All right, so Francisco Lindor was snubbed again. Snubbed of an all-star appearance and now snubbed of a Gold Glove. What are we doing? I'd understand if Francisco Lindor did not win the Gold Glove this year. Only one guy can. There's other great shortstops in the National League. But what the managers and coaches primarily who vote on this told us, as Rawlings has announced the finalists, Francisco Lindor was not a top 3 defensive shortstop in the National League. Are you kidding me? Like, really? Really? Did you watch the games? Because not only was Francisco Lindor great based on the metrics, he made so many clutch plays that mattered. Dansby Swanson, Ezekiel Tovar, and Mason Wynn, what do they all have in common? Their teams sucked and didn't make the playoffs. That's what they all have in common. And shortstop is the most important position on the field. It impacts winning. I'm not saying that the reason why those teams were bad is because those guys are bad at the position. They're all great defenders. But shouldn't Ty go to the guy that led his team from the brink? The guy that is going to finish second in MVP voting? Derek Jeter has 5 Gold Gloves that he doesn't deserve because he was the big name shortstop in New York. Why doesn't Lindor get that treatment? Anthony Volpe does. I mean, come on. I don't understand what managers, coaches, award, the baseball writers who vote on award. Like, why are so many people anti-Lindor? I don't get it. The guy shows up every day, does all the right things. Can't get any love in these award races. None. It doesn't make sense. Let's go through the numbers. 5 different metrics you can look at. I mean, there's even more, but 5 main ones if you go to Fangraphs that you can sort by position, see who's the best. Outs above average, defensive runs saved, ultimate zone rating, fielding run value, and DEF, which is defensive runs above average. 5 different stats. So what I'd like to do if I was a voter is I would look at all of them and just say, all right, defensive metrics are inconsistent. Who is getting rated highest among all of these different metrics? So you go to defensive runs saved. And this is clearly what the voters voted on entirely. Because you look at infield in particular in the National League. Outside of Nolan Arenado, they went top 3 in defensive runs saved for each of the positions. That's how they decided it. You look at top 3 in defensive runs saved at third base, shortstop, second base, first base, and those guys are there outside of Arenado, who probably just gets the legacy vote where he has to be a finalist. I don't think he'll win it. Matt Chapman should win it. But looking at defensive runs saved, okay, you have Mason Wynn at 14 defensive runs saved. He might win this award even though he doesn't deserve to be a finalist. Ezekiel Tovar, 9 defensive runs saved. Dansby Swanson, 7 defensive runs saved. Lindor was 4th at 2 defensive runs saved. Defensive runs saved does not like Lindor's defense for whatever reason. Outs above average, loves his defense. And I don't say it's just because of that. I've always liked outs above average more than defensive runs saved because it's range-based. I feel like that's important. And also, you measure defense on outs, not on runs. Yes, runs, of course, matters. But outs above average, who's getting me more outs? Francisco Lindor was 2nd in that stat to Dansby Swanson, who had 18 outs above average. Lindor was at 16. Tovar and Elly De La Cruz were at 15. Mason Wynn only at 3 outs above average. Now, again, defensive run safe, he has the edge. But then you go to ultimate zone rating, another defensive metric. Tovar, 11.2. Francisco Lindor, 3.5. Swanson, 3.3. Wynn, minus 1.7. Fielding run value. Swanson, 14. Lindor, 12. Tovar, 11. Elly De La Cruz, 11. Then you get to Mason Wynn, 3 fielding run value, 3. Defensive runs above average, which is fielding runs plus the positional adjustments. Swanson, 18.9, Lindor, 17.5, Elly De La Cruz, 16.7, Tovar, 16.6, Wynn, 8.6. Mason Wynn, outside of defensive runs saved, was behind Tovar, Lindor, Swanson, and Elly De La Cruz in all of the stats. So I'd almost make the argument that Elly should have been over Mason Wynn. If Ezekiel Tovar won this award, I'd have no problem. If Dansby Swanson wins this award again, I'd have no problem. If Mason Wynn wins this award, I'll have an issue. And Wynn should not have been a finalist over Lindor. Yes, if you look at the stats, Dansby Swanson was the best shortstop in the National League, probably the best shortstop in baseball. Do I think Lindor should have gotten it just based on team impact and all that stuff? And because I'm extremely biased, yes, I do. But again, if Swanson wins it again, I'll have no qualms about it. The fact that Lindor, considering the season he had, couldn't muster the votes to be in the top 3 is absolutely absurd. Absurd. And it leads me to have concerns about Silver Slugger because he is so obviously the Silver Slugger in the National League, and he might not win it. I really don't know. You look at Silver Slugger Lindor when it comes to weighted runs created plus, which is a stat that measures hitters on a league average of 100. This is the best all-encompassing park-adjusted stat that tells you who was the best hitter. Lindor's 137 WRC plus was better than Elly De La Cruz, who had a 118, and Willy Adames, who had a 119. I think those would be the 3 finalists. I don't even remember if they do finalists for Silver Sluggers, but Lindor got 20 points better than both of those guys. Had a better slash line across the board, better average than both, better on base, better slug. Led all shortstops in home runs and in runs scored in the National League. Adames has Lindor in RBIs, 112 to 91. Elly De La Cruz clearly had him in stolen bases, 67 stolen bases. I could see Elly winning it. I could see Adames winning it over Lindor, even though it clearly should be Francisco Lindor. Who knows? He might not even get runner-up in MVP. They might go. It would be such a slap in the face. It could be Otani Ozuna. I can't see if voters actually voting Ozuna, but it clearly should be Otani Lindor. And when it comes to Silver Slugger, it has to be Francisco Lindor. I hope he gets that. Gold Gloves, like I said, I personally just believe that the season that he had, voters should have just sort of awarded Lindor the Gold Glove and the Silver Slugger to have just sort of cemented that dude was the best shortstop in the National League this year, defensively, offensively, all together. But Swanson or even Tovar winning it over him, I would have been okay with because the metrics do suggest they were better. But Mason Wynn over Francisco Lindor at shortstop, rookie, you're already giving the rookie that much love. I just don't get why Lindor gets snubbed. But you know what? He said it. Carlos Mendoza said it. All that Francisco Lindor cares about is getting the big trophy. And if he has to settle for one award this year, maybe it's World Series MVP. We'll see how it all shakes out. Anyway, that's going to be all for today's edition of Locked On Mets. Again, we will be going live after Game 3. I'll also have a show to preview Game 4 that'll go up on Wednesday. So if you don't want to miss out on any of that Locked On Mets content, make sure if you're listening today, you follow, you rate, you review, wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Also hit that notification bell so you're notified whenever I go live. Make sure that if you want to follow the show on social, you can do so at Locked On Mets. You can follow me at Finkelstein Ryan. If you want to be Locked On Mets Insider, find a link in the episode description or go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen, your first watch every day. Now, for your second watch, head over to YouTube and check out the first ever 24/7 streaming channel that covers everything, the world of sports. We're talking about Locked On Sports today with our local hosts from each team, league-wide hosts from each league. Find Locked On Sports today streaming 24/7 on YouTube.